Hello, and welcome to the next installment of Paper Cuts. And this is actually our first Paper Cuts of the new year. I will be your host of this cast, Matthew Chang. With me to my right, I have Mark Mercury. How you doing?
Excellent.
Great. Dan Jackman.
It's the new year.
I guess that's great. James Madison.
Hello, hello.
And Banjo Castro.
I want to vomit.
I think you just
Wonderful.
became a president, Jim.
What happened?
I have no idea.
Okay. What about our boy Eric, man?
Yo, what's up with this, man?
Our newest member, Eric Jackman. How are you doing this new year?
Losing weight will make me feel great.
That'll make everyone feel great.
New year, new you, Eric.
Alright, and of course, with the new year, we have to say goodbye to the old year.
Aww.
And with that, we're also going to go into this with the ultimate end of death.
Because we like to start off the new year with a cheery topic.
Yeah. Always
What's more cheerful than death?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Clearly.
Well, whether it's, an important side character to get the story along, or, maybe your favorite character, death seems to always play some sort of role in our comic books. So with this podcast, we're going to be delving into it and seeing how each of us sort of feels on the topic. So with that, I'd like to ask the question to you guys: what is the most memorable death? Whether it's a side character, a main character, which one stands out to you the most?
Peter Parker, Ultimate Universe. My
All right,
boy.
Bando Castro, start us off.
Going in, saving the day. I love that. I love it and I hate it. So many character deaths. But yeah, for me, obviously, SpiderMan's my man. And seeing him sacrifice himself in such a way, I don't know. It's so cliche. And I can't really say it's unique in any way compared to any other character deaths. But when I think about the long list of memorable deaths, especially with so many passing this past year, Logan and such. But I don't know. I think it's just my attachment to the character. It was a lot of nostalgia to me for that. So
it hurt you personally? With,
yeah, it was very personal. That's all. There's nothing in particular I could say about the narrative that really stood out, that was different from anything else that would have been happening. But it meant something to me.
Well, with his death, he finally sort of revealed that this entire time he was kind of saving people because he was trying to save his Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Who was another character death plot right there.
Yeah, it was just a lot of gushing. That's all it was for me.
All right.
I'm going to go with a little more impersonal, but I think that the most important death for me, as far as superhero deaths, would be Captain Marvel, the original Marvel one, Marvel or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, despite having a stupid name, he is really the only title solo character
Are we talking?
that's died and stayed dead.
We're talking about Kingdom Come?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
That's my
No,
only...
Marvel's Captain Marvel, not DC's
Oh.
Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. There are 15 million Captain Marvels at this point.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's Captain
Everything's
Marvel.
cooking now, pardon me.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
The one that, traded spaces with Rick Jones for a while.
I got you.
In 1981, his series, which I think at that point was Marvel Spotlight or something, wasn't selling that well. And so to kick off their first run of graphic novels, Marvel put out The Death of Captain Marvel. And I think it was one of the first big deaths, but it's where it's more important than, say, the time they killed off Nick Fury in 1969 or the time they killed off Jean Grey. It's that he's actually kind of stayed dead. Yeah, he's had one-offs here and there where he's come back to life, but for the most part they've kept him dead and just had other characters fill in as Captain Marvel. And now in the days where Barry Allen's alive and pretty much everybody else who's ever died has come back, I mean, he's kind of the last holdout of the died, didn't come back.
So it's the solidity of
Yeah,
his
the
death,
permanency
really.
of his death, yeah.
Right, because it is quite common right now with characters being resurrected. Sometimes for the best, sometimes maybe not so much.
That's why
we don't really like to see our heroes die, and I think
alright.
that's also one with you, Brando. Will in the Ultimate or the Amazing Universe, it's far more solid. Will a character dies, they stay dead.
Kind of, yeah. I was actually when you were talking about permanency, I was just you remember just make that quick before, and I was like, Bucky, fuck, you know, 'cause, like he was the. I don't know if you ever heard that joke. He's like, you know, but they'll never bring Bucky back, or sort of deal.
There's been so many people where it's like the joke is, you know, comic book that, you know, the only person who stays dead is fill in the blank. And I can't think of a single character who hasn't come back in some shape or form. I can't think of a single one. I've been trying for like the last 2 weeks.
For me, it was
and that's the thing. Like I said, Captain Marvel was
back.
permanent, but there have been at least like 3 or 4 attempts that where it's him but it's not him, or it's him but it's a Skrull, or you know, whatever the fuck you want to have there. And so like, yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. Like, you know, Denny O'Neil said it would be a real dirty trick if they ever brought Jason Todd back, and then they brought back Jason Todd. So
that did take a long time though. It took them a long time, to the point where, like, I think that was one of the most significant ones, because when they did bring Jason back, it was such a weird idea that people weren't sure that it was actually going to be him or not. Like, there was actually debate about, like...
I don't know. I feel like they prepped the court with Batman Hush.
Yeah, that's
kind of,
no doubt.
They led people to believe it was Jason Todd, and so all the fans got excited and thought, Jason Todd's coming back. And then they didn't they didn't bring Jason Todd back in Hush. And then everybody was like, hey, I want Jason Todd back after Hush. And so I feel like that's why they
prodded the idea.
You think they were testing the waters with Hush?
I don't think they were testing the waters, but I think the fan outrage was such that they just were going for a crowd pleaser and said, well, see, after Hush, everyone said they wanted Jason Todd back, so let's bring Jason Todd back.
Gotcha.
Whereas I'd say, like, bringing Bucky back, another character you just mentioned, it's like, that was handled really well.
I had such negative, like not me personally, like people around me, such social negative reactions to Jason being brought back. So it's like interesting to hear about it from like another perspective. People were like, oh, people were so excited. I'm like, were people excited? Everyone around me was super pissed off. Like,
because we voted him dead. We had a vote for him to die.
It's funny enough, but apparently there was some research. I learned that there was a lot of like even news articles about when Jason Todd died, and everyone was pissed off that they killed off Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
Yeah. So news articles shouldn't talk about comics.
Well,
It just goes to show how much people care about Jason Todd.
Yeah. That too.
Everyone's like, oh, Robin's dying? You mean Dick Grayson?
Oh boy.
How about you, Dan?
Personally, for me, like the most important, like standout character death would have to be Captain America Steve Rogers in Civil War. That one really stood out to me. Not necessarily his resurrection, but the way that, you know, he's going up to the building to go and finally turn himself in, to stop fighting against America. Because at this point in time, for him going against his, you know, crusade against the Registration Act is to go and deny the new policy of America, no matter how bad it is. And since he does represent America, because he is the captain, of course, you know, he goes, he turns himself in, he fucking gets gunned down. And I think it was a really cool scene, and it really set the tone for several arcs of awesome Ed Brubaker comics. You know, to, of course, you know, bring back Bucky as Captain America, which is phenomenal. But also just the way that they did him in after that long, long battle in the Civil War, I thought it was pretty fucking wonderful. I almost prefer he stay dead.
See, I don't know about that one, because Captain America is one of those characters that has died so many times that he's approaching, like, Jean Grey status.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, he died at the end of the war, except he didn't. And then he died in the Stranko run, except he didn't. And, you know, then he died in the Civil War, except his consciousness was actually scattered back through his entire timeline and whatever. I feel like that loses some impact just because of how many times he's died.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think, like, the Civil War is, like, the last time he could actually really make an impact before we don't care anymore.
The way he died in Civil War was actually, like, what really sold it for me. Because I like I said, permanency is a lot of, like, plays a big factor into how I care, because we've been reading comics for, like, a fair amount of time. So, like, you know, when you see characters come back, you know, it's like to and fro, you kind of just feel if and after a while. But, like, when he died, you know, I just felt like it really represented the character well. It was like, you know, my feeling towards character death is just like, every character gets a chance to play in whatever story they want. That's why continuity doesn't play so much into my feelings towards comics. So when I see a character die, I just want to see how he dies and the way he does it and the way he kind of said it. He was there bleeding out after the shot, and he's just like still asking, for people to get to safety. I'm like, yeah, that's Cap. That's the way to go,
I thought it was incredible. Like, I still, like, when you guys were just describing it, like, I got, like, chills. Like, if you just isolate the Civil War storyline, you know what I mean, and you don't look at anything else, like, stretching back, it's an amazing moment, They also, it was a perfect thing to include in that story because he's assassinated, basically. They made it, like, almost like a political assassination, like he was, like, a civil rights martyr. You know what I mean? Like Martin Luther King or Gandhi or somebody like that. Like, he made his stand and he tried to, get some justice done, and then he got shot at the end of it, so he gets martyred. And I thought that was a fantastic way to end that story,
There's a lot of symbolism, though, too, because Cap really does, like, represent everything that's good in America and, like, the upstanding rights that people should be fighting for, and to be gunned down by, the Americans. It's kind of just showing you, like, how things go.
He was gunned down by Nazis.
Nazis, sorry.
Yeah.
That's so poetic. I need to go read it now.
But still.
Still. Alright. Eric, how about yourself?
Yep. My personal death is not actually a superhero at all. See, unlike the encyclopedias that I'm looking at right now, I'm actually relatively new to the world of comics. I started out with the New 52, and one of my favorite books in the New 52 included Animal Man and Swamp Thing. And in issue 18 of Animal Man, his son, Cliff Baker, dies in the most heroic act I had seen in comics in recent history. William Arcane is going for his father's throat, and over here this boy with absolutely no powers, who has constantly compared himself to his father and even his sister, who's a scion of the Red, jumps in between the two and takes the blow for his own dad because he knows that this is what serves the greater good. And to me, there is absolutely nothing that can compare to this death. In the next issue, issue 19, there's a funeral. The family is upset. It's just so heart-touching, and I can't have enough words about how fantastic this death is.
Also reading through the entire Animal Man arc, that is also my favorite death, or most memorable death, I should mention, for not only that fact, but many more.
I also liked it because I almost felt like it was a callback to the original Animal Man series. Encyclopedia over here,
Yeah, Grant Morrison, I know about the one.
But like Morrison, like, spoilers, like, kind of on purpose starts killing his family, like in the original run, so it's sort of like a back and forth there. But I thought it was great.
And speaking about the follow-up, like, you also go through, like, you see death is very emotional inside comic books. It changes the entire universe. But with the Animal Man one, the one that hit me the most was the fact that we see these heroes and how they deal with it, and they deal with it generally in a heroic manner in one fashion or another, a bit maybe, a little bit later, after grieving and such. But you really see Maxie, the young daughter, the youngest of the Baker family, and you follow how she deals with Cliff's death. And that, I think, made it far more meaningful to me, seeing how this little girl has to go and deal with the death of her brother now, and like how her father was actually unable to be the hero in this sort of situation.
Not to mention, the fact that throughout this whole entire run, we have seen some very distorted images of Maxine's head attached to the cat of a body, or attached to the body of a cat, and just like tearing through Animal Man's flesh. Like, it's almost like you've been conditioned to see death, and at this point to almost completely forget about it, be like, oh no, this isn't real. But Cliff's death is so real that it just, I can't even.
I'm clearly very thankful for
Well, we went on a bit of a side thing here, seeing how we actually showed the same death scene. But James, how about yourself?
I had a really hard time narrowing down like best or most. Seriously, like I got a crazy list here. But I went with like all-time most important, coolest. Definitely the death of Superman. Even though I don't really like the actual storyline itself very much, like the actual Death of Superman comic, I've always kind of had a hard time choking down. But I think it completes the Superman mythology, like kind of giving him an end, even though clearly it's been like 20 years since that happened, so it wasn't really the end. But kind of giving him like a Ragnarok is like cool, it's neat. Personal favorite ever is only like 1 page long, because I always have to give weird answers to these things for some reason. But in a one-off issue called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore, they kill Bizarro. They show you like Golden Age Bizarro's death. Fantastic, like really, really good. He, again, spoilers I suppose, but last thing he says is hello. He says hello, Superman, and it was wonderful. I liked that a lot.
Well, going on the death of Superman, that was one of the original times we saw a hero die, and it was quite impactful, at least for the DC universe. I think that's one of the things why death is so prevalent in like comic books, because it's like we maybe not see the death, as ourselves as being too impactful, but then we see the impact it has on the comic book universe.
Big time. Yeah.
And I think that's what actually drove me into comic books with Blackest Night, seeing how everyone fought, physically and emotionally with the death of their comrades, more or less.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you guys, with us getting into a little bit with the resurrection, does death actually hold meaning to you in these comics? Or is it just like, I guess I won't see this character for like a year or so, and then, they'll be back, and then I'll pick up the comic book again?
I think it depends on the circumstances. I think that generally it doesn't mean anything to me in the way that it doesn't genuinely upset me. However, I think it can convey powerful moments. Like, one of my favorite recent deaths was when they killed off Johnny Storm. Now, I know that isn't... I knew the second they did that wasn't permanent. That wasn't going to last more than a year or so. But he went out in a literal blaze of glory.
That was amazing.
And it was a stirring moment. So... I don't think death matters in the sense of, do I actually think I'll never get to see my favorite character again? No, I know they're bringing everybody back. But do I think that deaths can still have impact? Yes, quote.
Yeah.
So it's all about how it matters.
Especially when you put it in the context of, like, Damian Wayne's death. When you look at this huge overarching thing that Grant Morrison has written for many years, I feel like that Damian Wayne's death was perfect. Of course, he's already back not long after, but it's... When you look at it from a creator's intent point of view, it definitely makes the death that much more impactful.
That's an excellent example. I mean, it's contemporary, and it's both things at the same time. Like, if you just take that story for what it is, that Batman Inc. run, like, it's super, it hits you, it punches you in the gut when Damian finally gets killed. And the way it's, like, necessary. Like, the way the storyline unfolds. Like, it has to happen. There's no other way for it to happen, And it's great. That's a good example of a great character death. And then at the same time, right now, they're inevitably pulling him back, I mean, right away. We've touched on that here before.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the other side of the coin. Like, now I guess, it matters because it touches you, but at the same time, they're taking it away, and you're already off the bat cynical to the fact that they're going to, undo it.
I'm not quite cynical yet.
Do you think maybe he was brought back a little bit sooner than expected because of the outcry also? Because there was a huge outcry after he died.
I don't know. I don't even know. Actually, here to your point, is he back yet? Does anybody know?
Yes.
He is.
Robin Rises Alpha and Omega have been released, and in those storylines they depict him as being resurrected by actually Bruce Wayne himself.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers, obviously.
Yeah,
throwing that out there. But yeah, since you were saying, like, the question originally, do we derive meaning from death? It's such a fucking long and arduous question, but like I feel like all of us are kind of self-sustaining. We're gonna like drill that answer into everybody, saying I believe the consensus in the room is yes. Death holds meaning for each of us in our own way. As comic book fans, we all kind of have that sort of notion in our brains that death is not permanent in this very malleable universe that we read, but we take it in the moment and the experience of watching these deaths, because like, you know, a comic book is a story and we have to enjoy that point in performance and what it does for us. So each one holds meaning in different ways. Following up what what Mark was saying with Johnny Storm's death, that holds meaning for me in the same way it holds meaning for him. That we saw a character that we loved, that we read through the story and followed to that point where he finally went out in an amazing blaze of glory, and you watch the fallout afterwards, which is absolutely, that's one of the more stirring parts of that for me. Seeing Sue bottle herself up in a force field, and you know Reed can't get in there with her, or seeing, you know, oh my god, the dude bring back Johnny's uniform.
Annihilus.
Yeah, Annihilus. Sorry, I was having a brain fart there. Yeah, Annihilus bring the uniform, and everyone's like, "Oh snap!" You know, and just the way that it affects everyone, and seeing the Thing just cry. You know, trying to beat up the Hulk, but he can't do it. He's just crying, and Thor starts crying too, because like, you know, everyone's just upset about it because everyone's lost a family member. You know.
I remember there's a real touching moment where Spider-Man talks to Franklin about losing an uncle.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
Yeah. So yeah, Johnny's death really perpetuated out in a really strong way. And same thing with Damian. It's like, you watch the next 3 episodes of like what I would call it was Batman and Robin, but it was the Batman and series after that, because everyone else started accompanying him on his, you know, road to, you know, remission from his grievance, because like he just kept grieving constantly over Damian because he could not get over it, and it was beautiful and it held so much weight. So when we talk about meaning, it's usually in those moments where we see how much emotion it derives from us as a reader and from the universe we're reading in. So meaning, I guess, I'm sorry if I'm like going really long and loud right now, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, how we feel when that meaning is taken away from us, with Damian being brought back, obviously being the most recent memory, I guess, that we can pull out of.
The recent resurrection.
Does that pull out? Like, I mean, for me, it does and doesn't, because I still have that moment, and I can cherish that moment where Damian died.
They should stretch it out longer.
Yeah, they should have stretched it out longer. For me personally, it doesn't pull the weight off of it, because I've been so conditioned by comic books about the concept of resurrection. But at the same time, I can see and appeal to that sort of viewpoint where like you feel like you're being robbed of all that hard work, and it does kind of tarnish all the work of the author, Grant Morrison in particular, of setting up such an impactful death by kind of just like slapsticking him back into the cast. So like I can see where that offends people. Me personally, I'm so numb now like, as to the concept of resurrection. It's like, okay, whoosh.
It almost seems like the way comics used to be written in the golden age, where by the end of an issue everything would return back to the way it was at the start of the issue, that now it goes on for longer arcs, but really when the new creative team comes on, if they want to use Damian Wayne, well, they're going to use him.
Yeah, in whatever way they want.
Yeah. Right. So I feel like I do get what you're saying about it needing to be stretched out longer, Jim, because we've got you know, a character like Bucky was dead for either 40 or 60 years, depending on how you count. And so when they brought him back, it was a real moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they even managed to stretch out the reveal of him coming back, so you weren't sure who it was, then you weren't sure if it really was him or not.
Exactly.
They developed it in a nice way.
To the point where it had some impact. Whereas by bringing back someone that died last year, you're like, oh, alright.
The fact that they were dead was not usable as a significant element of the story, because in your mind, they were never really dead.
Right.
You know, like Jason Todd being dead was part of Superman lore. Batman.
It's okay.
Batman lore. You know, it's like you know, Batman's parents are dead. Those are dead people. You know, if you brought them back, it would be like, oh my god, no way. You know, but then you know, if you have this whole game where it's like, oh, it's a comic book death, it doesn't really count, then it's definitely going to lose some impact, you know?
I mean, it even got to the point where in Incredible Hercules, he goes to the underworld and kind of a reflection of Greek mythology. Yeah. And they literally portray the underworld of the Marvel Universe as a casino where all the dead characters are basically playing, and if they win, they get to come back to life. So, like, you see the Wasp, who was dead at the time, at, like, a slot machine, like, just trying to get another life. And it really... That comic was lampooning it, but that really is kind of the way it's almost become at this point. Like,
it's a game,
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with, like, well, the actual depiction of heaven, like, in the Marvel Universe, I guess. Like, if you want to call it the actual depiction, with Nightcrawler chilling out in heaven, totally cool with it, and, even Professor X chilling out with him out there in the clouds,
Yeah,
saying,
Professor X gets to go to heven. Fuck that.
And he's like, don't be a dick, don't go back. And he's
I don't know, man. We didn't meet him in hell.
So he kind of just, it's like, all right, fuck it. I got things to do. I'm giving up my heaven license to go back to Earth, and they're pretty much damning my soul to hell.
Yeah.
So.
And quickly they say, in the next issue with Nightcrawler that he can be redeemed, but
Jesus,
of course.
You're just like Captain Spoiler, dude.
Oh, well,
that
was
too,
a couple
obviously.
issues ago.
We've got like the.
I'll put a big banner on this one.
Yeah.
We've got the opposite ends of the spectrum. We've got like Jim warning us about spoilers from comics that came out like 30 years ago.
Nobody will ever read anyway.
Yeah.
Like comics that came out like 4 months ago.
Yeah, like in the Reagan administration.
This isn't my,
and Chang's like telling you about this week's comics. Like,
this hasn't been my best things for spoilers.
I'll tell you what, like as far as the meaning of death goes, for me, death almost has zero meaning. It's cool to go and see the final panels where the character actually commits the ultimate act, whether it be they go on a blaze of awesomeness or something really cool and heart-wrenching happens to them. But really, how they died is only really punctuated by either how they're going to be resurrected or how the people around them go and accept that death. Like, you see the death of Wolverine. Everyone knows Wolverine's dead. That's no spoiler there. They had 3 months of death of Wolverine. But, the point being is that the death of Wolverine was actually not that interesting. You go and you watch his little lead up and, watch him with his stupid claws that he wears, and you kind of see, oh, Wolverine, you don't have any healing factor. You are quite pathetic. And no one really knows that he's going to come back, and he probably will. But the main point is that afterwards, if you read any of the comics like Life After Logan and how they're actually dealing with the death, or in Chris Claremont's Nightcrawler, how Nightcrawler actually died because that was one of his best friends in the world, you actually get the real payoff, which is how that character actually goes and deals with the loss of the other thing. Who steps up to the plate afterwards? That's what's really important. Where you go and you see like the death of Batman, instead of actually dying, and it's the same thing with Captain America, gets flung back in time, and because he gets flung back in time, and he's not dead, the death actually kind of nulls itself out, and then you don't care about it as much. It's like, okay, everyone kind of dealt with it. You have the battle for the cow. Who's going to be the next Batman? Who's going to be the next Captain America? But ultimately, when you see some kind of like crazy time nonsense go and happen, which can be enjoyable in its own right, it really kind of sucks the meaning out of it as far as seeing everyone else's reaction, because it's a farce. At least like when they die, in many instances, afterwards when you see the reaction, you can pull some kind of meaning out of it for yourself. But really, it's like how they're brought back half the time, whereas the real meaning is actually derived because they're coming back.
Let's see. Alright, Eric, being a new reader like me, how do you feel about it?
It's really hard to tell, because a lot of these resurrections I really haven't been too much of a part of. Damian is still new. When we're going to see Wolverine be resurrected, who knows? But it's really hard for me to tell. I'm not as well read as you guys are as far as that goes.
All right.
Okay. I just wanted to throw it out there. If it's in my place to put a question. Dan was like giving an example of when Batman supposedly died, but you know, it was just more or less a trip in time. And like obviously we're already talking about Wolverine and who will kind of like slip into those shoes. Is it really necessary, do you guys think, that like someone replace a character after their death? I mean, I know they all kind of serve functions in like an overall kind of like structure of their respective universes, but like Wolverine's dead. Does anyone really need to pick up where he left off? Like Batman's dead. Does anyone really need to put on the Cali? Because I already know I have like ideas as to, like who would take over Wolverine as a role in the X-Men, quote unquote, like as a like a how do I put it, like a company or you know a structure. So it's like Jesus. Okay.
Now I want to guess.
Go ahead.
I haven't been following that storyline.
I already kind of have an idea, but go.
Sabretooth.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Especially with the way he is a good guy now. I'm like Sabretooth is probably the number one candidate.
Wow. I didn't even know he was a good guy now. I just guessed like who do you replace him with? Okay,
Absolutely,
the other
yeah.
guy.
It's Sabretooth, yeah, because he's on the good side now. So like he's a logical choice, in my opinion. But that's beside the point of the question.
It's not going to replace it with the natural clone of Wolverine.
What, X-23?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
alright.
can see it. Especially with the, bringing girls more into the
Bar.
forefront. But anyways, continue.
I think this
No, I'm
could be
done.
a,
I put a question up.
I think this could be a.
I find
a
there's a
shorty.
certain amount of
Yeah, Paul.
commonality between Brando's point and Dan's point, which is Dan was saying that it's something of a cheat to have the character flung back in time like Batman and Captain America had, or that Brando said was the whole, someone's got to take up the mantle right away thing.
Mm-hmm.
I actually see that as somewhat more valid than just the old-fashioned, he's dead, let's mope about it for 2 issues, then forget about it. Like, you'd have with, say, Gwen Stacy or someone.
Yeah.
Because at least then you're having
It's like a constant reminder.
Right, or it's building a plot line. Like, nobody really seriously thought they were going to kill Bruce Wayne off. So, if you're going in as a creator with the knowledge that 0% of your audience is going to actually think he's dead, then you might as well just use it as a plot point rather than actually as some monumental event in and of itself. Same thing with replacing them with another character. It kind of just, Batman is always in the top 10 of sales. They aren't going to end it just because they have a plot where Bruce Wayne isn't in the present anymore. Yeah. They're going to throw Dick Grayson or John Paul Valley or some other schmuck in there. And so I think he kind of, because death has been devalued as an event in and of itself, it actually provides opportunities for writers to use it as a plot device, sometimes effectively, sometimes not effectively.
And naturally, I mean, I understand this is a business and like the show must go on, quote unquote, but I just feel like sometimes, it's just an interesting concept to explore. Like, okay, Wolverine's dead. Perhaps no one fills those shoes ever again. They don't make any Wolverine-esque comics for the next year or so. That'd be definitely interesting. Not surprising with the dick punches Marvels are shooting out right now to Fox, So, it's whatever, but I was thinking about it out loud with you guys.
It's an interesting thing because it's a reflexive move. Like, okay, a character dies, right? And unless it's Elektra for some reason, right? Immediately they come in. Here's Batman 2, right? And I was thinking about with the Death of Superman storyline, we got 4 Supermens, right? And with the exception of I think the Eradicator, all of them are now iconic characters that are indispensable.
Was it the Man of Steel?
Right?
Hank
Henshaw, who the Cyborg Superman, who doesn't have a huge footprint, but is
pretty
still
cool.
an unbelievably cool character.
Yeah.
And Superboy, who is now even though it's different versions later, they can't get away from him. You know what I mean? He's part of the Teen Titans thing, for real.
I blame Young Justice.
Nah, I know.
Blame or credit?
Both. That's
Because what's it called? Superboy, I feel like his prevalence was strong even prior to that. It's only gained more because of Young Justice, but he still had a very strong presence in comic books, I think, prior to that. So
always been one of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
and that specific version too. Yeah.
Superboy Prime. Yeah. I know. I see you, Jim.
Alright, so it seems like it's generally characters, are going to be taking up a mantle anymore. As to Wolverine, I don't know if someone's going to directly take over like they did with Batman. Personally, I thought, Dick Grayson was always being trained kind of to take over the role. I mean, Batman always had a contingency plan, so obviously if he were to ever die, there would be a plan for that.
Naturally.
But personally, I'm also on the X-23 train with Dan for that one. But we'll see what happens.
Ultimately, someone's got to pick up the mantle. We cannot abandon our soft, nougaty center of sales. Where will we get all of our lifeblood from?
Apparently,
Where
Miss
will we
Marvel
go
and
and take random
Spider-Man.
character to boost sales?
Are you suggesting they actually introduce new characters?
Oh my god.
Look, no, I'm just saying. I'm just saying, like that's where Marvel is making the money
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
If you look at sales figures, Miss Marvel and Amazing Spider-Man are killing it.
Right.
So that actually brings me to
They're getting ready for the transition
another point.
New blood, new readers.
to purchase it.
To the comic book industry as a whole, is death sort of just a selling point to them? Because as Mark said, it's more of an event that they do to kind of like make a plot point anymore.
Well, I just, and I'm not trying to deconstruct your question here, Matt, but like, is there anything that isn't just a sales
I know,
gimmick?
this is
I
a
mean,
business.
like, they feature fight scenes in their comics because they sell comics. They feature, romance in their comics because it sells comics. Everything comes back to that eventually. It's like you said, it's the sweet nougaty center. They're, they aren't gonna, it's a business. And so, is it a sales gimmick? Yeah, but so is everything. I mean,
At its best, it should be both at the same time. I think you gotta write both things at the same time. It's just, there's just stories that never end, like Lamb Chop style, like they're like soap operas or long-running TV shows. Like there's going to be a next week. Yeah, I don't know where that comes from.
sorry.
It should be both though. It should be an event that's going to move units, and it should be well written. You can do both. You can do both.
Yeah, you can do both most definitely, but there is some like nefariousness in it as well, particularly when you talk about the death and rebirth of Superman. You go and you see like the massive fan reaction. People started collecting that comic in particular because like, oh my god, they fucking killed Superman.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be an instant collectible. This is going to be best comic of all time. Oh my god, my heart was so stirred when the Man of Steel died. This is so great. And then when he came back, it's like, my comic is worthless.
It's also just people with a poor understanding of how like economics work. You know what I mean? Like if you see like 70,000 people, you know what I mean, right next to you buying something at the same time that you are, you should have an inkling that this is not going to be valuable. This is not going to be common, right? I mean, and that was just at that time. I remember growing up in Philly when I was a kid, the Death of Superman event, and this wasn't in the climate that we have now where superheroes are like everywhere all the time, everybody's digesting. They had advertisements for that event on the sides of SEPTA buses. There would just be the bloody Death of Superman logo. There were video games.
Jay Leto wore a black armband for like 2 months after they killed Superman on the Tonight Show. It's like someone had actually died.
Well, we've talked about Superman's relevance. Like he's like a piece of Americana. He's so out there as opposed to other Superman. Even like like we were saying, like we live in such a digestible superhero age right now. But like
it almost makes the deaths that aren't in continuity almost worth a little bit more.
Yes.
Because like say take something like when Lana Lang sacrifices herself in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, or when Superman seemingly dies in All-Star Superman, or like half the DC universe in Kingdom Come. Yeah. Like these things have a little more impact because at least in their own universe, we know that, they're only trying to sell these 4 issues. So if it's the end, it's the end. And we know that they aren't going to try and keep that never-ending story going.
It's a one-off storyline that's hopefully left alone. Yeah. Unless it becomes so successful that it gets returned to over and over again. Right. And like, even in things that are like almost side continuities, like the Ultimate Universe, Ultimate Peter is still dead, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So there you go. I mean, that's being left alone.
I would make the argument that actually devalues it a little bit, just because it is in this alternate universe. We can kill them. It's fine. They can stay dead. Good story. It's over. Whatever. But whatever. It didn't happen. Main continuity doesn't matter. You know?
That makes sense. That does make sense. Yeah.
Right. It seems they're far more willing to do stuff with side universes than they are with working with our main continuity.
Well, you start going with the main continuity, and it's like all of a sudden people's jimmies get a little bit rustled, you know? But I have to say, as of recent, did you guys know that Thor died?
Thor died? What are you talking
Thor's
about?
died
Thor
like
died.
15 times.
Thor died. However, his resurrection happened one panel later. In issue 11 of God Bomb, this is when there's like past Thor, present Thor, future Thor, right? And you know, he just gets struck by God or Gore the God Butcher, right? And on the very last panel of that page, it says, and I quote, "Thus died Thor for the 9th time that could be remembered." And on the very next panel, it reads, 3 days later, he rose again, and apparently, like, future Thor with the all-father power resurrects him and shit. It's absolutely ridiculous.
What's going on?
Well, and I mean, that's the thing. Like, when you said Thor died, my reaction was, well, which time? Was it the time Onslaught killed him? Was it the time that he just kind of ended all of Asgard and Ragnarok during Avengers Disassembled? Was it the time that the Wrecker killed him in, like, Thor number 148 back in, like, 1967? Like, these characters have kind of just have this, you know,
Luxury.
weeble wobble but they don't fall down, like, aspect to them. Brando, you look like you got something on your mind.
Don't waste the recording. Like, I had it, and then I had a huge mind break. Like, thought train destroyed somewhere along the line, so...
Thought train derailed.
It was
I
super
get
derailed.
you.
It was super derailed. Don't worry about it. That's why I try to look at his notes. I'm like, maybe they'll put me back on track. No, there's just scribbles there. So
I'm very loose with my.
it's okay. So I got nothing. I had it, and then I lost it.
You know, the only characters that really seem to stay dead and have any kind of, like, relevance is when they kill secondary characters. Secondary characters are so awesome to go and kill because when they kill a secondary character, they stay dead usually forever, and then you mourn about them. And actually, strangely enough, even though people go and bitch about characters that are resurrected, those secondary characters that were killed and mean something to you, you want them to be resurrected. I have, like,
Ant-Man, Harry Osborn, Gwen Stacy.
Jason, Damian.
You can cough all night. I have a big list of coughs in my
And
head.
Dan, I love you. That's just not true.
I mean, it
The
isn't,
secondary
it isn't,
characters
though. It
come
isn't,
back.
it isn't. I mean, like, I can definitely think of, like...
It depends what you see as a secondary character,
Yes,
though.
yeah, exactly.
Because the Robins are definitely becoming increasingly forefront characters. Each
Tell me
one of them
Jason's
even getting
primary
their own.
character. Tell me Jason.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I think that one distinction that can be made is if you're talking about secondary characters that have to do with the, like, origin story, like you're saying, Thomas and Martha Wayne. For a while when they were hinting that Dr. Hurt was Thomas Wayne, that was, like, a big deal. Or, you know, Richard and Mary Parker, they did bring them back for a while, but it was, like, weird as hell.
That was a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah,
stuff.
or like Uncle Ben. Like, these are characters that they're going to bring back. Professor Abraham Erskine, because they have to do with the origins of the characters a lot more. But when you start getting to the characters like Gwen Stacy or Harry Osborn, like, you know, they're going to bring them back.
I consider those kind of like more focal points. Like, for me, secondary character is, you know, I was reading Red Lanterns the other day, and spoiler warning, they killed off Skalax and Zillia Zox. Now, they're not anywhere near like the spotlight, but they had enough in that book to where they were extremely amusing and they added to the overall flavor of the book. And when they were both killed, I was so fucking sad, and I just wanted more Zillia Zox and more Skalax. It's the same thing with, you know, the Blue Lantern Corps. They go and they kill off Mr. Ganesha himself, Brother Worth.
I didn't know he was dead.
Yeah, they was a relic who was trying to go and preserve the entire universe or whatever. Goes and melts the whole Blue Lantern planet of Odin at the same time, killing every Blue Lantern except for St. Walker. And I was like, wow, Brother Worth, for some reason I have some awesome connection with you that, maybe it's your design, maybe it's just the way you speak and how you interact with people, but you are a secondary character and you died and I want you back. There's just little characters here and there that, maybe mean a little bit more to you than perhaps, the main focal point at times.
Sure.
If they killed off Lockheed right now, I'd cry.
Yes.
Sure, the public demand is feverish for Brother Worth's revival,
I'm going to throw
You'd be
something out
surprised.
there right now.
There's a good following.
Agent Coulson.
Agent Coulson.
I mean, that's the big character first character death of a modern era of superheroes. I mean, you didn't see that coming, and he was the secondary character of the entire universe. He'd been in every movie, you know what I mean, for 20 seconds. And when they did kill him, if anybody hasn't seen the Avengers yet, whatever, everybody went nuts.
You don't exist.
You're under a rock. I'm sure even
If you haven't seen it yet, you're not listening to this podcast anytime soon.
Probably I don't know how you got
that's-
here. I don't know how you got here. You should go home. But I mean, and on top of that, he's not actually dead. He's actually has his own TV show right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's the ultimate secondary character, but he's not dead.
Right? I don't know, man.
Alright, and with that, we bring you to the final part of our podcast, as always, the current recommendations. Mark, what do you have for us?
Well, the book that I'm going to recommend this week is War Stories. Number 4 just came out, started a new arc. I'm a big fan of war comics in general, but the best war comics are always written by Garth Ennis. He's been writing these war stories that last for 3 or 4 issue arcs for a while now. First at DC under the title War Stories, and then over at Dynamite under the Battlefields title. Now they're called War Stories, and they're from Avatar Press. And it's just some really classic war stories. They're always very well researched, very historically accurate, covering a wide range of war stories. Get a lot of World War II, but it isn't limited to World War II. His current arc takes place in the Yom Kippur War. I always thought war comics were a bit more realistic early on than pretty much any of the other genres of comics. And to this day, they stay that way, and Garth Ennis is the best. So, if you're going to read a war comic, I'm pretty sure it's the only one still on shelves. It's coming out new, but read War Stories.
Very nice. How about you, Dan?
Well, since we're being also topical right now with awesomeness, this is not topical at all. This is just timely is what this is. When Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, retired from the job, another man rose to the occasion. Stole the costume. None other than Scott Lang! His somewhat sordid past behind him, Scott took on the size-changing and communicating abilities of Ant-Man! Ant-Man #1 just came out this week by Nick Spencer and Ramon Rosanas. And Nick Spencer is just coming hot off the run of the Superior Foes of Spider-Man. If you are at all interested in the new movie that is coming out and don't know jack diddly about Ant-Man, I highly suggest please pick up the new Ant-Man book. It's at #1. Super easy, accessible. You don't really need to know anything. I just told you everything you need to know. Get this book. It's really pretty and awesome.
Right? What do you got for us, Jim?
I guess I'm going to go with Gotham Academy. I think this is the first time I've recommended anything new or even published within the last 15 years. But it's got yay!
Yeah,
I'm up to date. I picked it up randomly because I like the pictures on the cover of it. So, but it's actually really good. The art is great. The storytelling is charming. It reminds me a little bit of Runaways. It's got this kind of young adult vibe to it where I'm reading it and I don't feel like it's written specifically for me, but I really enjoy it anyway. The characters are cool and almost everybody's original, so you can just pick it up and enjoy it. It's good.
What do you got for us tonight, Brando?
Yeah. I got the Slot Humberto. God, I can't say Spanish names. Humberto Ramos.
The man's name's Castro, and you can't say the Spanish name.
Look, man, I can speak some Spanish. Look, but first name's Humberto. That's a weird name. No offense, Mr. Ramos. You draw brilliantly. But yeah, I have the issue 1 through 6 Amazing Spider-Man collection paperback. It's amazing. It's so cool. I haven't read any of Superior, so seeing Dan Slott's run is like all but fresh to me right now. I've actually read some of Superior, but seeing him back in the suit, him as in Peter, has been great. Introducing some new characters. You know, Silk, very interesting. Weird. Kind of getting used to it. You know, her being around for so long apparently. But it's a very interesting story, playing off a lot of fixtures in the Spider-Verse over the last like 50 years really. So it's really interesting. And to see character relationships like Black Cat and Electro in conjunction with Spider after post-Superior events is very interesting. So like it's a very, very fun story. Haven't had anything this fun since Batgirl came around, 35. So it's been nice to step out of the dark into the light again as far as comics are concerned. I feel like I went through a blue period of the last like 5 years, so I'm kind of like putting on some nice shoes. So definitely check it out. The Parker Luck. It's a good read. You should all read it.
Alright, and how about you, Eric?
It would be a damn shame if I didn't mention Swamp Thing 38, written by Charles Soule, drawn by Javi Pina, because this is the final issue of Swamp Thing, and Charles Soule has done just as fantastic of a job as Scott Snyder did with Swamp Thing. Please check Swamp Thing out from issue 1 to issue 38, and even go back to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. You know what? Just go buy Swamp Thing. Buy all of Swamp Thing.
Alright.
What, you're gonna tell us to go back and like read Len Wein's Swamp Thing in 1972?
Hey, I like Len Wein.
But you just never
Alright.
It was a different Swamp Thing.
And for my recommendation for the night, I'm recommending Wolf Moon, written by Cullen Boone and art by Jeremy Hunn. This comic book is for more of a mature audience, and personally, for me, it's exactly what I've been looking for. I'm sick and tired of having all of my classic horror villains, the werewolf, Dracula, being depicted as sort of tragic heroes anymore. Screw that. This book brings it right back to what it should be. A werewolf absolutely being what a werewolf is, an apex predator preying on humans, because there's nothing we can do about it. Check this book out. It's a short form, 1 to 6, so if you're into the whole dark kind of lore that I am, this is going to be right up your alley.
I think the takeaway you should get from that is that Chang is an apex predator.
Has anyone seen,
Possibly a werewolf.
has anyone seen Chronicle?
Yes.
Predator?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Oh, that's like an awesome movie.
That's an amazing movie.
Oh man, much better than the last Wolfman movie they put out.
I fell asleep in that. I felt bad because I spent money to see that in theaters and fell asleep. Do you know what that's?
It says about you. Interest level.
I think you guys should probably check
That
out
was such
the
a waste of
comic.
I'm
money,
going to.
dude. That's
I'm
what
going
bothered me.
It's okay, brother.
All right.
Should we like record a different ending since we just started talking about movies?
No, well, this is a great ending.
Yeah,
you know?
this is a fine
Anthony
ending.
Hopkins makes terrible werewolf movies.
But he
Thank you for listening to Paper Cuts. Please like and comment below and
subscribe if you can.
subscribe if you can. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
Excelsior.
Woo!
Yeah.
peace.
Don't forget, have a good day and have a good life.
Yeah, have a good day, have a good life.
Of course.
I didn't know that was official. I just say that a lot.
You do.
I know.
Alright then, it's official.
We should be like the War Owl.